Hi everyone and welcome back to High Plane Games and part 2 of the Ultimate Racing 2D2. There we go, we got it out. F124 mod. And just a quick recap before we dive into round 5 through to 10 is that we have George Russell currently leading this alternative timeline out of the two Ferraris and his teammate Hamilton, with Alonso, Perez, Norris, Piastri and Verstappen, who sadly has had a couple of really dodgy races, down in 9th for him, then Stroll. And then in the bottom half of the field, Hulkenberg leads the charge there ahead of Albon, Tsunoda, Ocon and Ricciardo, with Magnussen, and then the Saubers and Alpine of Gasly in a sandwich there of the Saubers, Sargent towards the back. Constructor-wise, Ferrari leads the way just ahead of Mercedes, with McLaren and Aston and Red Bull squabbling over third. Haas lead the bottom half of the chart. So we've got Hungary, Saudi, Brazil, Mexico, and two others at the end as well. I know it finishes in Japan, but let's continue on to Hungary next. So this is using the updated tracks that all came through for Ultimate Racing 2D2 with its big 2.0 update, and these tracks seem to be longer than the original ones and more detailed in the way how they've been graphicked. I can't think of the right word, it's very late at night. But Max Verstappen leads the way as we get Arund Hungary. It looks like he's going to try and get to the end of the halfway stage and maybe have a good run at last, although Carlos Sainz, who's already had a pole this year already, it looks like he's going to have another one here with that Ferrari. An excellent second half of the lap sorts him out. That puts him ahead of Perez, who beats Verstappen in all of that. Alonso, who's been wily, racking up top 5 finishes all the way through pretty much, is in 4th ahead of Hamilton. The McLaren sandwich Leclerc with Russell and Stroll towards the back. Hulkenberg props up the second half of the grid, and the Alpines are doing better. They do struggle in terms of top line speed, and it seems to be that the Saubers are at the back of the field there, with Zhou and Bottas 18th and 20th, and a Sargent sandwich there. Okay, softs versus hards for 20 laps of fun, and it signs getting off the line well ahead of Perez. Verstappen's on hard tyres, as is Hamilton, who gets very pincered and pinched in at turn 1, and Norris gets around him. Perez, though, getting wrong-footed as Alonso moves up into second, and that's going to put him behind teammate Verstappen. He's going to try and go around the outside, but there's nothing doing there, and that means that he's got to actually elbow his way past Verstappen. Norris sneaks away through, and Leclerc, who's in hard-tired mode himself, is going to go around the outside and potentially stick Verstappen down into 6th place, and indeed he does. So it is Sainz, Alonso, Norris, Perez, Leclerc, Verstappen, Piastri, Hamilton, Russell, Gasly, Stroll. Albon gets past Ocon. Zhou with hard tyres has made up places, but has got the Haas of Hulkenberg, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Sargent, Magnussen, and Bottas is right at the back on hard tyres, not having a great start. But this is great for Sainz as Norris moves up into second, passing Alonso and Perez in all of that. These drivers are getting away very quickly on the soft-tyred compounds. The tyres only last 6 to 9 laps, and look at that free wide between Perez, Alonso and Norris. They're having a right scrabby-dabby-do as they get round those final corners, and this is going to play into the hands of Leclerc, who's about to push into the back of this, but Sainz is just pulling away because he's got nice clean air. Norris, though, does eventually now come into second ahead of Perez and Alonso. Russell has got around Piastri and Hamilton, and once again Max Verstappen, he's been given all of the top stats in this game, but it doesn't seem to be working for him in this playthrough, and I'm secretly loving it, although Alonso and Leclerc seems to have run into trouble because that's dropped them right off the back of the leading trio, and now Russell and Leclerc are all over the back of the Aston Martin driver. Something's not worked for Sargent and Tsunoda at the back too. They've fallen off the track somewhere along the line, but they have rejoined, and there we go, Norris and Sainz having the same problem there. How they've been able to just sneak up onto the back of Sainz, I've got no idea. It doesn't make very much sense, the way how they just seem to absolutely charge their way around. I've turned off the boosts So it shouldn't be quite so dramatic, but it clearly is. Gasly having a good run in the top 10 on the soft-tyred Alpine as well. With Ocon in 12th, this could be the potential for Alpine having a very good result. Bottas now clearly in the game, and here is Lando Norris then leading the way for McLaren. Perez gets past Carlos Sainz, but not for long, as Carlos gets his way back through again. But this is key now for Lando Norris. He's taken the lead in the McLaren. They've not looked quite like this all season long, as Alonso now finally gets background Charles Leclerc. He needs to do it because his soft tyres are going to start to be not really the key tyre to be on at the moment. Verstappen down in 10th. Why has this happened? He's behind Gasly's Alpine, for goodness sake. So he retakes the position and moves back up into 9th for the time being. Stroll has kind of lost the back of this as well, as Albon heavily damaged in that Williams. Something's gone clearly wrong there. And towards the back, Tsunoda and Zhou also damaged, battling around with hard-tyred compounds. A few people into the pits though. Alonso and Ocon are the first few in. Where does that put them out? Ooh, well, Ocon's going to rejoin Plum last. I didn't see where that dropped Alonso out, just behind teammate Stroll, interestingly. So, got some work to do there as Perez and Sainz lead the way. Norris had clearly pitted as well, as there is Leclerc and Piastri battling away. And that is Norris retaking Hamilton, and there you can see Perez and Sainz into the pits. All well and good, but Norris has got at least one Mercedes between them, and now he's got two as he gets round the outside of George Russell and moves himself up into third. And there's his teammate Oscar Piastri taking the lead away from Charles Leclerc, who hasn't quite been the lead Ferrari in this race so far until the pit stops kicked off. But now they're busy squabbling, and all this is doing is allowing Lando Norris to scream up onto the back of this battle. It's working beautifully for Norris. I think he might end up diving past Leclerc around the outside. No, he switches to the inside. Nice move done. Nearly had a McLaren 1-2 there for a second. I think we might have it if he gets round the outside of turn 2 into 3. No, not quite. Leclerc holds it for the time being, but oh no, well, that was short-lived. Now it's a McLaren 1-2, and Norris really is in the pound seats. Hamilton trying to have a look at Perez now on hard tyres. Verstappen's not pitted yet and has moved up into 7th, but again, these long strategies are not working for Max Verstappen. I nearly said Heinz-Harald Frentzen. What decade am I in? Anyway, Gasly's pitted and is now back out in 11, so this is really looking like it's going to work out quite well for him. It's not working out well for Zhou. There's smokes billowing out the back of that car as the two Mercedes pop into the pits. And Charles Leclerc fancies taking back the lead from Oscar Piastri. And what's interesting here is Norris, as soon as he then gets out on front, doesn't seem to be able to immediately just hoover up onto the back of these two. I thought he was going to do so. He's got a tyre advantage in terms of compound and in terms of actual deg, as Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen pop into the pits bang on half distance. Hard tyres can last 9 to 12 laps, which is fine, and I'm sure they're going to come back out, yep, both rejoining in hard tyred compounds, and I think that will take them to the end of the race, as that's Leclerc versus Russell, who's pitted and come back out on soft, so he's going to need another pit stop for that. We'll see how that all comes out. Bottas in the lead kicks Sauber as well. Magnussen spewing out a little bit of smoke from the back of his Haas, yet to pit, as has Stroll, as Zhou and Tsunoda look like they're going to be the battles of the wooden spoons, both out in soft tyres there, as Norris, Perez and there's Piastri in. And he's gone for soft tyres. Now, you could technically make it to the end there, but the soft tyres are going to be absolutely knackered. So quite whether this will work out for Piastri or not remains to be seen. Lance Stroll still yet to pit on those hard tyres, trying to get as long as possible. As that is Esteban Ocon in for a second stop, and that's him getting onto hard tyres as Bottas dives past Daniel Ricciardo. Sauber versus Racing Bull. Hulkenberg, there's Sargent getting past Magnussen as well. It looks like Sargent's going to score a couple of points here, as into the pits comes Lando Norris from what was, I think, first or second. one of the two, as there's Russell diving past Alonso. Clearly Russell fancying a move down most straights at the moment, but that's worked out nicely because it's new softs versus old. Again, Alonso's going to be slightly wrong-footed here. His teammate Stroll finally pits. He was the last one to do so, rejoins in 11th. This could work out nicely for Pierre Gasly versus Lance Stroll, I think, in the battle for who's going to get a top 10. And that is Logan Sargent up into 15th, ahead of both Hasses and his teammate, as Yuki Tsunoda ends up about to be lapped by Sergio Perez. The battle for the Red Bull seat, I think, definitely landing more towards Sergio at the moment, but there's still plenty of time to go. Sainz then up into second, Russell in third. Difficult to say where all of these strategies are going to run out on, actually, to be fair. Piastri with the best tyre life so far in fourth, but Leclerc's on hard tyres, and I think that will see him better in the long run in fifth, but I don't know if he's close enough to really do everything that he needs to about it. There's Perez really struggling to get around Guan Yu Zhou's Sauber. Those Saubers have been a menace, as Sargent just rejoins from his last pit stop just in front of the Asian duo, and Perez still not able to get round Zhou, and this is just hurting him, as Sainz and Russell and Piastri and Leclerc will all be screaming onto the back of that car. Hamilton's dragging Norris along for 6 and 7. Verstappen's going in 8th, and he's got enough tyre life to get to the end, but it's one of those, again, just like nothing drives. I'm very confused by it, as Alexander Albon takes Daniel Ricciardo for 14th and 15th. But again, both behind Ocon, Alpine having probably their more competitive race so far, outside of the weird we somehow got one of them in fourth positions at the beginning of the Bahrain Oval. As there is Carlos Sainz now all over Sergio Perez. That's the problem with not dealing with traffic. Oh, that was a bit naughty. Triple chop, might as well call him a barber there, Sergio Perez, as he chopped off Carlos Sainz's racing line, but it keeps him in the lead for the time being with 5 to go. But will we have enough tyres to get there? Because they look very knackered to me. And into the pits comes Perez and Sainz and Piastri. What? Now, Charles Leclerc does not need to pit, and this is the key here. He's going to keep on going. Tsunoda into the pits as well for another pit stop there. And what this is going to do is really make it a hard versus soft battle. Zhou again is going to get in the way here for Charles Leclerc by the looks of it, unless he runs out wide, in which case he does. Side by side. Nope, Leclerc does get through, and that's crucial, because as Perez, Russell, Sainz and Piastri all come bombing through on brand new soft tyres, and look, George Russell immediately diving through on Perez to take second position. Lovely stuff there from the Mercedes driver as Zhou pops in and gets out of the way. That's going to be handy. Hülkenberg rejoins behind Leclerc, so that's still going to put at least one back marker in the way a little bit. But Russell, Perez, Sainz and Piastri are all closing down Charles Leclerc, but it's not quick enough at the moment, it seems. Norris, Alonso there continuing gaggling on. That's Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton battling away once again with problematic back markers, and that's showing Tsunoda getting in the way again. Stroll still in 10. Gasly has now dropped down to 11, so that's not quite worked for a top 10 for the Alpines so far. But Leclerc, his gap has extended now to over 4 seconds. That was more like 3 the previous lap. So it really shows all of this battling between Russell and Perez is just helping Charles Leclerc. As look, Perez goes round the outside, gets cut off slightly by Hülkenberg, but the pair of them do get through just in time. And now the battle resumes once again. Charles Leclerc is up to the back of Logan Sargent in the Williams, who's about to, I think, almost double his point scores in this race if he just carries on where he is. But now look at how quickly Russell, Perez, Sainz and Piastri are catching up. Norris and Hamilton look like they've got round Alonso nearly there. But we're going to stick with this because it's the last laps of drama. Although look, 3 into 1 somehow goes, but Hamilton leapfrogs both Alonso and Norris there. So it's all kicking off in the battle for 6th and 7th. But here's the battle for the lead about to come up. And it's Leclerc, once again, they're working out nicely for the traffic for him. Got Ricciardo and Magnussen just up the road, but I don't know if they'll actually get to them or not. As we come into the final lap, can Charles Leclerc hold off Russell, Perez, Sainz and Piastri? 5 battling for the win. Sainz runs out wide. That will help Perez. Oh, it won't. Carlos Sainz does a dive bomb for it and looks like he's going to try and get round Perez anyway. But Perez holds on to the Red Bull podium for the time being. Charles Leclerc, it's now less than a second. George Russell is absolutely eating into this margin. Will he keep it, or will Russell be able to dive through at the very last corner to get it? Look at how Leclerc is just sliding around. It's going to be banging out of the final corner. And look, Russell goes for it, but he can't. Charles Leclerc wins by 0.07 of a second from George Russell. Perez 3rd, Carlos Sainz 4, Piastri 5, Norris 6 after leading so well early on. Alonso keeps Hamilton and Verstappen at bay for 7, 8 and 9. There's Lance Stroll coming across the line in 10. Pierre Gasly, I think, will still be pleased with 11th because Ocon is 12th. So that's a great points haul for Alpine, despite being potentially the slowest car. Then it's Bottas, Albon, Magnussen, Ricciardo, Hulkenberg, Sargent, Zhou and Tsunoda is the non-scorer there in the Racing Bulls. And having pretty much dominated Ricciardo for the early part of the season, it comes to the midway race and Tsunoda is a non-scorer. Fastest lap there by Norris, really confirming that that was a race lost really for the McLaren team. So what does that do to the standings? Well, Charles Leclerc takes over the lead from George Russell. At the halfway point, just a single point between them. Sainz keeps a watching brief in 3rd. Alonso, ever consistent, is just ahead of Hamilton and Perez. Norris keeping ahead of Piastri for the time being, but those McLarens kind of in their weird little own battle there in 7 and 8. Verstappen only 9th. I can't believe this. Ahead of Stroll. Then we've got Albon, who is now equal on points with Hulkenberg, with Ocon just 1 behind. So that's interesting there. The no score for Tsunoda means Magnussen and Ricciardo close in. Gasly leapfrogs ahead of Zhou. Bottas there in 15 points, and Sargent gets an extra couple there, so that's helpful for him. But Ferrari, well, they really do extend over Mercedes. McLaren keep Red Bull at bay. Aston Martin's just behind, and Haas now keep 6th. But Alpine, with that decent result, moves up to equal points with Racing Bulls, which I didn't really predict coming forward for that. Next up is Saudi Arabia and the Jeddah Corniche Pasty circuit, as I call it. So this track didn't originally exist in the first version of Ultimate Racing 2D2, and you can really see how the graphics in this game have evolved over time to allow people to make much more colourful and distinctive background imagery with all of those runoff areas and things like that. So this game really is coming into its own as more and more people get to play with the mods and see just how beautiful and excellent this game can become. And this is looking like a real hurrah for Red Bull, locking out the front row, and not before time if they're supposed to be doing anything like what their stats are meant to be doing in this game. So it's a Red Bull 1-2 front row. Mercedes, Hamilton in 3rd. Leclerc, our championship leader, is down in 6th, and George Russell is 9th on the grid in the other Mercedes, sandwiching the Aston Martins. Once again, the second half of the grid this time is kicked off with Daniel Ricciardo. Alpine not terrible though, with Gasly up in 12th. The two Hasses doing well with an Albon in between. But again, Sauber just overall looking like probably the poorest team, even if they aren't necessarily that in points. They nothing sticks out from them. They're just baseline towards the back, whereas other teams have more strengths and weaknesses. But Logan Sargent, torrid qualifying. He's going to need to do better than that come race day. And Verstappen is there on hard tyres with an absolute cluster of soft runners right behind him, but he still leads the way through turn 1, so that will be very, very helpful. Perez and Hamilton eagle-eyeing each other as they work their way through the extremely fast and tricky Sector 1, and then trying to push his way through there was Hamilton, not able to do it. Verstappen still leads the way. Here he comes, bombing his way through. Sainz too. They come through turn 22. And that looks like Piastri steaming through. Perez not able to do anything about it until the final turn. Now he moves forward into 4th position. But Verstappen's able to use the slipstreams to get himself back ahead of his teammate. Then it's Norris, Leclerc, Alonso, Russell, Stroll. Russell on soft tyres as well, so he's going to need to make some hay. And there's some real problems towards the back. Zhou with some damage there, as is Sargent. So clearly there's been some contact there. As Piastri takes the lead from McLaren. Now Sainz does too. And I have to say, Max Verstappen on hard tyres looking very good with this race. Soft tyres can go to laps 6 to 9 as Piastri now under attack by Verstappen, who's moved into second. Hards can go past halfway, so Verstappen could make one of his one-stoppers work here, particularly if he can just keep going on that slipstream and make it beautifully work for him as he heads to the front of the queue. And this is something we've not seen from Max Verstappen all season long. It's taken till race 6 for him to decide to go for some dominance. But here comes Carlos Sainz yoinking back the lead in that Ferrari. Verstappen now under attack from Lewis Hamilton, who steams down the outside. No DRS check-up games here. But Hamilton into the outside wall. That will cause damage and will cause him problems as Piastri moves past Verstappen back up into 3rd. Perez is next, then it's Russell. Norris has been dropped, and that was problems there for Stroll and Magnussen creaming into the wall, and that won't have helped them at all. Alonso really being buried in this too with the Aston Martin. This is pretty much his poorest showing so far, unless he can sort something out. Then it's Hulkenberg on softs, Albon and Hards kind of all on his own, and the back load of the field really kind of strung out there, with Ocon being passed by Zhou towards the back. Sainz though has a huge thing. And that's Russell into the wall. That won't have helped. Perez put him in there pretty much, but Verstappen's in trouble, and that's Norris and Leclerc doing the same thing. And I think there seems to be the wall that is catching drivers out if they're going side by side and causing themselves problems. So got to be nice and clean and single file through there if you're going to make anything work. But really, Charles Leclerc now down in 12th on soft tyres, now 11th as he passes Hulkenberg. That's an absolutely shocking time for the Ferrari driver, and he's going to need to make some big hay on that as both the soft-tyred Leclerc and Hulkenberg gets past Norris. Norris into the pits actually, so clearly some damage in that McLaren will get him back out in 19th position, just ahead of Ocon. And are they going to do exactly what made him damage the first time? No. Just checking. As Sainz drifts his way around, and there you can see a few people there just touching the wall. Hamilton into the pits very early on lap 6 onto the hard tyres. Technically could drag that one to the end, but feels like the wrong strategy to do. But he comes out in beautiful clear air in 6th position, well ahead of Alonso. So there's a real big gap there, as there's Leclerc and Hulkenberg in. Leclerc comes out just behind Pierre Gasly. That's Logan Sargent into the wall. Wasn't quite sure which driver put him in there, but no, it won't have done him any good anyway. As there's Carlos Sainz in from the lead. Perez follows him in, as does Russell. There's Piastri in. Verstappen takes the lead of the Grand Prix, but not by tons, is it? So he's going to have to really think about that. Piastri has come back out again on soft tyres, so he's done something slightly different to everyone else. Alonso up in 4th place, but he's not actually pitted, so he's going to need to kind of fall out of that line very soon. There's Bottas up in 11th place, Ricciardo 12th, both ahead of Stroll. None of them have pitted. There's Leclerc, he has, and there's a real kind of squiggle of cars towards the back of the field. Norris down in 19th, that's not good for him. He's going to have to really think about how he's going to make things better in the second half of this race if he can, as Max Verstappen leads the way, yet to pit. But I don't think this is going too badly for him, because Sainz has pulled away from Perez, Alonso and Russell as they all squabble over 3rd, 4th and 5th. Alonso now much better racing now that he's out of that kind of mid-pack carnage that was going on. But I think that's kind of put paid to a lot of his efforts anyway, is look at the way our Sainz is reaming in on Verstappen. That is damage as much as anything else, as grip through all of those corners. Verstappen losing so much time. I don't think a one-stopper is worth it. I think you should be twoing and trying to do soft maybe, or soft hard soft maybe, something like that. Gasly into the pits for Alpine, was running not too badly, but has come back out again on soft tyres, as if to prove my point. As Sainz commands the lead then, Verstappen dropping back horribly. Alonso, though, is keeping Piastri, Russell, and there's Perez, who's dropped down to 6th, very much at bay. And this is going to play into Verstappen's hands, because whilst they are closing Verstappen down slightly, keeping everyone at bay, Kevin Magnussen having a great run in 9. There is Albon into the pits. He's going to rejoin just behind Nico Hülkenberg, back out in 12th. So the Haas is doing very well. Stroll yet to pit, so both Aston Martin's going long. Oh, that's Zhou in trouble. And he's not pitted either. I think he could well be on for 0 points by the time this is all finished, as Carlos Sainz is now lapping Logan Sargent on lap 12. Verstappen's still not pitted either. You would come in and then go to soft tyres. Same for Alonso. That's Kevin Magnussen in, and that's exactly what he's done. Moved on to the soft tyres. He's going to rejoin just behind teammate Hülkenberg, who still needs a second stop. And Lance Stroll rejoins in 14th. Ocon's in too, as is Guan Yu Zhou, both damaged cars. And Carlos Sainz goes round again. There's Verstappen out with soft tyres. Alonso, I think, is going to do the same. Yes, he does. So there's Verstappen rejoining in 6th position. But really, you've got Hamilton, who might try and go to the end. Same with Russell, perhaps. Maybe Perez. Piastri will need to pit again from 2nd. And he's not really pulled far enough away from Perez and Russell and co to do much about it. And there's Verstappen steaming through up into 5th place. Hamilton's got no answer for him at all. And this could be key, because we've got Sainz going around quite serenely on the hard tyres. Piastri is closing him down slightly, but will definitely need to pit. Here's Verstappen now onto the back of George Russell as they make their way past Guan Yu Zhou, who's in the wall. Next up for them to lap is Esteban Ocon, and Verstappen made a bit of a meal of trying to get round Russell, who's now struggling to get round Ocon, now moves out of the way. And if Verstappen can kind of get through before the turn 27 fun, which I think he will do, yeah, he's going to have to really think about it. There's Piastri in, so another set of soft tyres. I think that will pop him back out in 7th behind Alonso. Indeed it does. Alonso there, wily character. I'm not sure. Well, it was the early part of the race that really done him in, as Hamilton getting caught up with Zhou, who's battling with Sargent of who can not be the wooden spoon, really causing them problems. Perez gets a lap on Ocon. And you have to say now all of the top 3 are a little bit more stretched out. So Sainz leads the way. Russell's kind of on his own. And there's Verstappen now with Perez in tow, being dragged along for the ride. So Verstappen really going to need to use his soft tyres in a good way to close up on everyone. Gasly holding up Russell will be very helpful to the Dutchman. Zhou and Sargent both in the pits, as are Leclerc, Magnussen and Norris. So lots of pit action right at the end of this. I'm assuming everyone will be out in soft tyres. Indeed they are. And Russell is closing down on Sainz, but that's because Sainz is trying to lap Lance Stroll, who's literally come in, I think, for new tyres and is causing a bit of problem. What else have we got going on around this track? That's Norris in 12th, about to take Nico Hülkenberg, I think, for position. Indeed he is. Hülkenberg's on relatively new tyres too. Ricciardo on old hards. Ooh, and there's problems for Ocon, Tsunoda and Bottas. 3 wide into that corner will not work. And Esteban Ocon comes out of that quite damaged by the end of that. And that's going to allow Bottas to have a nice clean run and get past Yuki Tsunoda and Esteban Ocon. And perhaps with less damage, as those two clatter each other and then get Gasly up into the mix. Maybe that will sort them out over time. Carlos Sainz 2.5 seconds clear of Russell. Verstappen, though, into third. Alonso's keeping a watching brief there. Now he's ahead of Perez. Piastri next up. There's some real interesting potential moves happening here with 2 to go, because Verstappen, I don't think, is out of this, as there he is making a pure acceleration pass there on George Russell. Runs off into the dirt though, and that's allowed George Russell back through up into second position. Verstappen having an absolute awful last bit there, and it's because those tyres are absolutely knackered, but so are Sainz's and Russell's hards. So it's going to be a tale of who can hang on and slide their car round the best as they pop a lap round Daniel Ricciardo. And I'd still say Max Verstappen's got it potentially covered. Maybe not for the win, because Carlos Sainz is able to hold on to that for the time being and is letting Lance Stroll drag him along down the straights. But, ooh, again there, Verstappen not able to get round Russell. Russell quite damaged now in that Mercedes, but it's working for him. Sainz, though, now is past Stroll, and looks like he's going to be just good fun as Ocon causes problems up on the other side of the track. It looks like Carlos Sainz is about to give himself another Ferrari victory and potentially take over the lead of the championship. Across the line comes Carlos Sainz for a great win. Russell second, though, is great for his championship. Verstappen his best run into third. Alonso 4. Then it's Perez. Oscar Piastri grabs 6th. Lewis Hamilton is 7. Championship leader Charles Leclerc is only going to get 8th place, and that's big problems for him. Kevin Magnussen, though, that's, I think, his best of the season in 9th in the Haas. Great run for him. Albon grabs 10. Ahead of Lando Norris, Nico Hülkenberg, Lance Stroll, Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas will be next. And that's all good. Perez gets the fastest lap point. Just rounding off that, Zhou got ahead of Tsunoda, Ocon and Sargent ended up last after all of that with 0 points. So what does that do to the championship? No, Russell stays in the lead of the championship, but Sainz puts himself right into position as Leclerc slips down to third. So that second place there for Russell, really key, versus Max Verstappen, who now is equal on points with Norris, and so equal 8th as opposed to 9th in the standings. So Verstappen getting some dignity back there, just about. Top 5 all over 100 points. Stroll kind of in a no man's land in 10th. Then Albon and Hülkenberg doing well. Magnussen moves up into 13th, having overtaken Ocon there. Ricciardo now has more points than Tsunoda. And the 2 Saubers of Zhou and Bottas trying to nibble in on Gasly, but that's a weird battle at the back there. And Sargent, no points again. Will he reach double points by the end of the season? Who knows? Racing Bulls pull away from Alpine a little bit there. But Williams and Sauber still struggling towards the back. And Red Bull now up into 3rd in the standings. So, Interlagos, Brazil. One of my favourite tracks to drive around on most racing games. The Bowl of Flow, as I call it. And let's see how it works in this new beautiful updated version, looking lush and crisp in terms of graphical design. And here comes Verstappen again, bombing it down into the first sector. Way clear from everywhere else. Where this form was in the first 5 rounds of the season, I've got no idea. But interestingly, look at the way how George Russell has moosied his way up into 2nd, potentially 3rd, as Charles Leclerc nudges himself ahead in that Ferrari. But it's very clear who's in pole, and it's very clear we've got a top 10 versus the rest of the field as they all cross the line there. So, well done to Verstappen. Nearly half a second clear of Oscar Piastri, who grabbed 2nd in all of that. Russell in 5th. Leclerc 3rd. Sainz down in 9th. Again, splitting the Aston Martin. Stroll ahead of Alonso there, I think for the first time this year. Hülkenberg best of the rest, although Albon getting his Williams in between the Haas's I think is a good run. And the 2 Saubers on the back row of the grid, not looking good for them at all. All right, 20 laps. Again, soft tyres only lasting between laps 6 and 9. And Verstappen versus Piastri. And it's the Australian that takes the lead. McLaren up front there in the soft tyres. Here comes Leclerc trying to have a look at Verstappen as well. So all to play for. Perez on hards, as is Hamilton, as they work their way through. George Russell there up into 6th position. Stroll having a good start in the hard tyres up into 7th. As Carlos Sainz is the one that's really wrong-footed from that top 10 angle and is struggling to keep Alexander Albon behind, although he gets a good launch out of Junção and round the back straight and puts pay to Lando Norris as the rest of the field squabble their way through. Sargent off to a poor start at the back. Piastri, though, leads the way. Leclerc keeping a watching brief. Verstappen down into 5th position, but he's on soft tyres. He shouldn't be dropping back in the stone like that. As Russell, well, he was 6th this time around, or this place last lap. Now he's in 4th and is about to try and have a go at Perez for 3rd. Nothing doing. Perez holds the defensive line and works well, but I think Russell's going to bomb it down to the outside on the overtake line. And indeed he does, moving up into 3rd position. Leclerc's round Piastri as well. So Ferrari up front ahead of the McLaren. A real pinch point down at the bottom of that centre S. Magnussen leading the second half of the field, basically, although Albon is doing a fine job in that soft-tyred Williams up in 8th. This could be his breakthrough performance if he can keep that up. He was doing well at San Marino, wasn't he, before he ran into problems later on in that race. Leclerc, though, trying to drag Piastri along for the ride for a 1-2 battle up front, and I think Piastri is going to have a go, and indeed he does. Whew. Those overtake lines are extremely powerful around this circuit. You can just bomb it through from anywhere, a bit like what it was doing between turns 3 and 4 at Hungary. And Alonso about to do the same thing on overtake line 2 to take Leclerc for 2nd. So, got to be so careful. It looks like people are using like extreme overtake energy battery, but it's just different lines, and then suddenly people speed up and slow down. One of the quirks of this game, I must say. Verstappen, though, now up into 5th on those soft tyres, starting to feel like he's getting into the groove of it, hopefully. Sainz now up into 6th. There's Perez, Albon, Stroll and Hamilton. That's Lando Norris, busy trying to battle with Kevin Magnussen for 11th and 12th. Both side by side, and I would say, Norris gets a penalty for pushing Magnussen off the track. That was a weird one to give a penalty for. And that's allowed Daniel Ricciardo up into 12th place, which will help him out. Ocon doing well in 14th on hard tyres as well, as Logan Sargent seems to have fallen off the back of everyone else, as Zhou and Bottas have a little squabble at the back of the field for the Saubers. Piastri, though, over the line to start lap 6 of 20. And here's where, potentially, at the end of this lap... Oh, no, early for Albon. What's that going to be, another soft? No, he's on to hards, okay. So he will probably make a 2nd stop. Ooh, a little bit of a love nudge on the barriers on the way out of that pit lane. That'll be something to look out for. So that is Kevin Magnussen retaking Esteban Ocon. He was ahead of Ocon last time we looked, so they've clearly swapped positions, and they've both got round Lando Norris, who's having another odd race. Towards the back, as into the pits comes everybody. Perez, though, stays out and continues on. It's a very long pit lane around this track, although you are kind of back up to speed on this long route back out. Now you can see Piastri rejoining in between Hamilton and Stroll. Stroll going to try and go around the outside. Indeed he does. Piastri lets him go for the time being. But we'll see how that plays out as they make their way round the infield section. Alonso has pitted. Sainz is back out. He's the only guy on soft tyres on the track altogether at the moment, is Carlos. So he's taking a slightly different approach to his strategy. So he will definitely need a 2nd stop. He might as well go soft, I'd imagine, and try and really go like all-out quali laps. As there's Max Verstappen getting round George Russell for 8th and 9th positions, so that'll be key if they stay that way as things continue on. Back up front, Alonso, Sainz and Hamilton having a proper good squabble, with Piastri just blocking them off up front. Stroll running 2nd, but yet to stop in the Aston Martin. And there through goes Carlos Sainz down at the bottom of the hill. And then up he goes, but he's going to need to really push forward in this Ferrari because he's got a tyre advantage, a grip advantage and a speed advantage, although he's slightly gone on the grass there, which has not helped him in his battle against Lance Stroll. Oh, and that's not how you overtake. A little bit of rubbing is racing. This isn't stock cars, but Carlos does eventually get through. And next up for him will be Perez, who's some 3 seconds further up the road. Alonso, Piastri, Hamilton, Leclerc. Then it's Russell, who's well ahead of Verstappen, so that didn't last long. Norris is now under attack from Albon, who's on hard tyres. Remember, he pitted a lap earlier than everyone else. Then it's the 2 Hasses yet to pit. Same for Ocon, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Gasly, Zhou, Sargent. Bottas has pitted and is catching everyone back up again. So, again, the undercut proving very powerful here, I think. And I also think that the soft tyres are not proving as powerful as I think some people would have hoped for. As into the pits comes Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, Guan Yu Zhou in the Kick Sauber. And that is Bottas about to have a go at Logan Sargent. And that's worked out well for Bottas to get back ahead. He's pitted Sargent? Sargent hasn't. Zhou back out in soft tyres. That's going to give Carlos Sainz some company, but I don't think it's working for him. So we'll see how that goes. Hamilton now moves across onto the soft tyres too. Lap 10 going on to lap 11. So he's going to be absolutely knackered tyre-wise by the end of the race. Hulkenberg doing the same thing. And yep, lots of people coming in and switching onto soft tyres. Oh, Ocon doesn't. Neither does K-Mag. Clearly I'm having a Ted Kravitz moment. That didn't work out well at all. But they've both come out just behind Valtteri Bottas, who pitted way earlier. But I think they're both faster than him, so they need to work that out. Here's a good squabbleroo. Ricciardo has pitted. Tsunoda hasn't. So that is a real good change for position. That's Norris there diving into the pits and rejoining in 11th. So plenty of stories to be told in this Grand Prix so far. But one of them is that Carlos Sainz is now leading the way in that Ferrari since we've had Perez pit and rejoin back in 5th position. So big things for him. Stroll also pitted and rejoined in 7th. So that's working out well. And here comes Sainz in for a second stop. And yeah, soft and soft. So he will get to the end on that. But he's only done 6 laps each of those first 2 stints. And now he's going to have to do a 7 or an 8, I guess, at the end of this. So he's going to have to make these go longer than I think he'd probably like to. But let's see how it goes. Stroll's going for the soft-tyred run as well. But at least he's in clear air along with Hamilton doing the same strategy. So that might work out slightly better in their favour because they're not having to do too much racing around and losing tyre performance that way. But yeah, we'll soon see how this goes. Sainz immediately on the attack for Sergio Perez down into the Senna S. Beautifully done there by Carlos Sainz up into 4th position. Not a lot that Perez could do about that. In fact, there you can see actually the different racing lines of normal on the green, overtake 1 and overtake 2 of the blue and red lines, depending on where people go. So it's all very clear what the different lines can and can't do, as Leclerc pops a lap on Sargent. And Oscar Piastri has a go at taking the lead from Fernando Alonso. Now, both of these need to pit. So this isn't really for the race lead, I think, as Stroll, Hamilton and Norris all come in. So they're not going to the end on no soft tyres. That surprises me. They could have tried to hang it out. Well, no, it doesn't surprise me. I would have called them in for a stop. But I would have called them in probably earlier in the previous stop to make it a bit less lopsided for them, as in comes Alonso and Piastri from the lead and second, and that does give the lead to Carlos Sainz in the soft-tyred car, and he's okay. He's going to go to the end for this. So Sergio Perez on harder tyres, but his tyres are obviously going to last longer than Sainz's. So this is what I was saying about Sainz only doing 6 laps per first 2 strategy calls or stints. And this could well play out to be a problem for him because his soft tyres are going to conk out quicker than Perez's hard tyres one. So he's got to get a gap in and make it work. Alonso now into third on soft tyres will be absolutely bombing along, trying to see what he can do as the two Kick Saubers pop out from their latest pit stops. And Zhou gets out just ahead of Pierre Gasly. Bottas is out ahead of Sargent. Piastri is being brought along for the ride. Then it's Russell in 6th ahead of Hamilton and Stroll. Verstappen down in 9th, now battling with Lando Norris, who's got himself into the top 10 and a bit more respectability, but it was a weird first half of the race for him. Hulkenberg is best of the rest ahead of Albon, so that's not worked out so well for Alexander Albon, considering how well that was going in the first half of the race. It's kind of all congealed back to where he was beforehand. And then we've got the rest of the field streaming through. Perez in trouble there, as is Gasly, and in fact that's going to cause problems because I think Alonso is going to go straight through on Perez, and indeed he does. Alonso moves up into second position ahead of Sergio Perez, and I think this could be a problem now for Carlos Sainz, because if he's going to sit and try and hold on for this win with a couple of laps to go, but Carlos Sainz is... sorry, not Carlos Sainz. I need to get him back. Oh, I think I've altered something. I didn't mean to. Perez is now back ahead of Alonso anyway, and here comes Charles Leclerc through. I was going to say, if they're all squabbling with each other and Alonso's now clear of the hard shod tyres, actually that's more of a problem for Carlos Sainz, I think, than Perez. But Leclerc is on the case and is causing problems for everyone. So this could be mission Ferrari. Leclerc just getting all up in Fernando and Sergio's faces to make sure that Carlos Sainz can keep the win. But obviously there's a championship at stake here, and look at the way Leclerc and Alonso go side by side on Perez to yoink second and third place away from him. Again, Alonso there clipping the dirt. More problems around turn 3 down to the back end of sector 1 and this Interlagos circuit. It's the final lap, and you have to say Carlos Sainz has played an absolute blinder here. He went soft, and it has worked an absolute dream. And whilst Leclerc is absolutely catching him hand over fist, it won't matter a jot as they come around this final corner. And Carlos Sainz takes a well-deserved strategic win here for Ferrari. And it's a 1-2 again. So Leclerc comes home second. Alonso on the podium for third. Piastri got past Perez for 4 and 5 in all of that. Russell, 6th place, a little bit subdued there, ahead of Hamilton, who just beats home Lance Stroll. Verstappen only 9, Norris 10. Albon has got ahead of Hulkenberg, so that's worked out well for him. Then it's Ocon, Magnussen, Ricciardo, Zhou, Tsunoda, Bottas, Gasly, and again Logan Sargent, Nil Poix for the Williams. So it doesn't matter if Albon's up there scoring 9 points for the team. You need to have both cars in the points, and Logan's not doing it. So this has big consequences, I think, for the championship, because Carlos Sainz now moves into the lead, well clear of Russell, who was only 6th in that race. Leclerc moves right up into 3rd, ahead of Alonso and Perez. Hamilton, again, Max Verstappen, only just beating home Norris in the race to stay ahead of him in 8th in the championship. And Stroll kind of in no man's land. Albon, by being best of the rest in that race, holds that place against the two Hasses. And Zhou there moves back ahead of Gasly in 17th and 18th battle. Ferrari a real advantage now with 3 to go. Battle for third is still juicy though between Red Bull, McLaren and Aston. As we go to Mexico. Round 8. This is another circuit that I really enjoy driving. I'm not very good at it because it requires quite a good flow, but I do enjoy it. And let's see who enjoys it around this 2024 mod. Thanks to Nuno for putting this one together for us. I've got a funny feeling it's Nuno that provided all of these like version 2 tracks for the main core game as well, or at least may have helped. So well done and thank you. And it's great to see this game continuing to grow and grow and grow. And it looks like the home advantage is here for Sergio Perez, who fancies having a pole position just from Carlos Sainz. So interesting there. Perez gets the pole on home soil ahead of both Ferraris, both Mercedes, and then teammate Verstappen. McLaren Aston, round out your top 10. The two Racing Bulls are 11 and 12. Then the two Alpines doing well, clearly. I'd have thought they'd have struggled with that big long straight, but clearly not in this day and age. Hulkenberg slightly out of place there, down in 18th, you would argue. Okay, the standard 6 to 9 laps for soft tyres, and the top three are on them. Perez holds off Sainz and Leclerc. Hamilton and Russell both on hard tyres in the Mercedes as they make their way through. Did everyone get through okay? Oh no, Albon stuck, and that's Zhou and Sargent also having a terrible time as people off all over the place. Fading out there is Russell, who rejoins back in 10th place. This is huge for the championship protagonist there, or one of them at least, as the drivers make their way through. But it's Perez leading the way from Leclerc. Sainz, oh, problems for quite a few drivers there as they spank up against the wall. Clearly there, if you bounce off of the one curve, it causes you problems on the next one. So all kinds of issues down at the stadium section, and that has allowed Perez and Leclerc to get some real arms and legs advantage over the Hamilton and Sainz squabble. That's Norris being pushed out there by Lance Stroll in the lead Aston. So they go side by side through the S's. Beautifully done there, Lawrence Stroll, to get ahead into 8th position. And that's Carlos Sainz into the barrier there. And he's going to do the same thing here. Ooh, I think this could be big, huge problems. And look at Yuki Tsunoda up in 6th position in the Racing Bull. We've not seen that team this high all championship long. So Yuki doing a fine job, immediately gets shafted by Carlos Sainz, but then look at the way how everyone else steams through. You can really see it's a tier 1 and tier 2 service going on in this championship as Alonso tries to work his way back through again. All of these soft shod tired drivers struggling away. Perez though, master class of 1 at the end of lap 3. Then it's Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen up into 4th. Then it's Piastri, damaged Sainz, damaged Alonso, Stroll, Norris, Gasly doing well, now ahead of Yuki, who got real problems there. Teammate Ricciardo in 13th on hard tyres. That could be interesting. But look, George Russell 15th in that Mercedes and damaged, so he's not going to be running nearly at full pelt. As Zhou causes himself problems and gets overtaken by teammate Bottas. Again, everyone making their way through. It looks like Leclerc is closing down Perez now a little bit in clean air. Hamilton doing a fine job in 3rd, and remember, he's on those hard tyres, so he could be looking at a 1 stop or something like that. Verstappen using the slipstream beautifully to close up on Hamilton. Runs a little bit wide though, and that's Piastri versus Sainz. I'm not quite sure if that's what kind of corner cutting that is, but it happened as George Russell got round Kevin Magnussen last lap. We'll be aiming to try and do the same with Esteban Ocon this time around. Perez slightly extending his advantage over Leclerc as they make their way through this tricky stadium section, and there's Piastri now this time is the driver causing himself problems. And now you can see the damaged cars coming in early. So Sainz in, Norris in, and they've moved on to hard tyres. And they're going to rejoin just behind Daniel Ricciardo. And look, they're out ahead of George Russell, who's not pitted yet. In comes Ocon, Zhou, and I think that was Albon in the background too. And they're all back out on soft tyres. So let's see how this goes. Next lap around, Perez keeps going, but Leclerc is in. He's going for the undercut. So is Max Verstappen. Ferrari and Red Bull taking the earlier stops. Alonso in 2 for the Aston Martin. Stroll, his teammate, following him through. Piastri not. He's on the hard tyres, of course. Goes round again. But Perez extending this soft-tyred stint. This could be good because he had the gap over everyone else to do it. Could Sergio end up being the first Red Bull driver to get the win this season. With 3 races to go. Oh, that looked wonky. Into the pits comes Perez. So this puts Lewis Hamilton now into the lead. But he is on the hard tyres and will be looking to stop in the next few laps. Leclerc then has pitted, and that's the power of an undercut. Wow, that says a great deal. So Perez now back out in third. Then there's Piastri, Verstappen, Alonso, Norris, Sainz. There's George Russell getting past Daniel Ricciardo. But Russell yet to pit and is only now up into 9th position as Stroll makes a hash of trying to get round him. Manages to stay ahead of Daniel Ricciardo for the time being though, but new tyres for Stroll. He's going to need to sort that out quite quickly. Then it's Kevin Magnussen, Tsunoda, Ocon, Gasly, Hulkenberg on his own, Bottas on his own, Albon and Zhou, and again Logan Sargent at the back on his own. Williams not having a great run here so far anyway, but Sargent looking like he's going to get nil points again if he continues running at that pace. Hulkenberg into the pits. That's a hard tired stop. And that's the first one, I think, of the hard tyres in. As there is Zhou trying to get round teammate Bottas. Again, one pitted, one hasn't. And there is Hamilton pitting. And he comes back out with hard tyres. So clearly he's doing, or has the potential to just stop it and try and get his way through. But I think Leclerc and Perez might be able to be on a better strategy with a 2-stop. Verstappen trying the same thing with hard tyres, but he's gone earlier with that. So I think he'll have to pit again. He will do if he keeps clouting the wall like that. Piastri then in 5. Quite a lot of people in the pits. It's Ricciardo, it's Magnussen. That show getting around Hulkenberg. Sargent there. There's Bottas then rejoining in last position. That could be a problem there for Valtteri if he's not able to get some good time on it, especially now that he's getting blue flags from Leclerc and Perez as this battle for the lead starts to resume itself. Into the pits has come Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. And yeah, Bottas going quite slowly, and the blue flags are not helping him because he's having to move out of the way. And Charles Leclerc moves forward into lapping him, and Bottas goes off the track in sympathy and then spanks the wall. I was waiting for that. Not a good run, or a good look even. Hamilton then in third, some 5 seconds back though, so it's not really working well for him. Next up then is Verstappen, then Alonso, Sainz and Norris. Piastri on his own, as is Stroll. Tsunoda really on his own in 10th place, but looking good in the Racing Bull. Gasly is ahead of Russell, who I think is now starting to sort himself out and close down on Gasly. In fact, you can see visually just how much difference there is there between the two cars. Ricciardo, Magnussen, that's Albon and Ocon into the pits. Alpine versus Williams. Ooh, that's not going to help Perez. I think Perez would have told Ocon to walk off by the time that had all finished. Zhou into the pits and back out again, as was Sargent, I think, from a second stop. And here is Leclerc versus Perez, and there's a whole pain of traffic to deal with as they work their way through these things. They've got another stop to have, these two. And they've made good work enough of the back markers, although Ocon is not helping things at all for Perez and has put him into the wall. Into the pits comes Leclerc, into the pits comes Perez, probably wise with that damage, and it gets them away from all of that traffic. Hamilton then gets into the lead, Alonso moves up into second, Verstappen moves up into third. Hamilton can make it to the end. I'm not entirely sure if Alonso and Verstappen can do. But this now means that it's Hamilton versus Leclerc versus Perez really for the lead and the win for me. And those two soft shod tired drivers are going to be absolutely going full beans as they work their way through past Nico Hulkenberg. Perez was like, out of it. And there's Verstappen there, and you can see the difference between how people can kind of floor it and get the traction out of that stadium section. Verstappen's car was much more skiddy and slidey as Sainz and Piastri are back into the pits again for new stops, and that is Charles Leclerc straight up into a podium position, and this is crucial for his championship challenge because Alonso and Hamilton aren't quite in it. And when you look at his championship rivals, Sainz is 7th, Russell is 11th. This is key for Charles Leclerc if he wants to get back into the real big positions here, as Alonso pits from what was 2nd position. Hamilton, quite rightly, they're still continuing on. So I said Verstappen and Alonso would pit and come back out again, and they do indeed. 4th and 5th positions, and that's not going to help Carlos Sainz one little bit. Sainz is still dragging Norris along for the ride. Norris is having all kinds of problems keeping lapped traffic behind him. So there's a freeway squabble for last positions, although Hülkenberg's just been into the pits for a second stop, so that's dropped him right the way to the back of the field. I'm not sure what's happened there with him. But here is Hamilton coming through to do lap 17. And look at Charles Leclerc. That is all of the straight line speed advantage. Straight in for an overtake. Can he make it work? No. They lap Albon. Here comes Leclerc, though, steaming straight through into the lead. And he's going to need to make sure he doesn't hit the barrier. Hamilton nearly done it more than he did. Wow. That was a problem. And so through into the lead goes Charles Leclerc on what is probably the better strategy of the two. Two stopping seeming to work quite nicely here. Perez, though, gets round Albon, and now Lewis Hamilton might have a bit of a problem keeping Perez behind as well. As Alonso, Verstappen, Ocon having all kinds of problems there and getting out of the way there for Carlos Sainz, thankfully. As Piastri, Stroll. Ooh, something's gone horribly wrong there for the Kick-Sauber duo. They're both knackered as Norris tries to get themselves through. And yeah, into the pits comes Guan Yu Zhou and Valtteri Bottas. And that could be a big reprieve for Logan Sargent and Nico Hülkenberg, because those two are in for a third stop. So clearly something has gone horribly wrong for those two as they get back out again. 2 laps to go, and I'd have to say Hamilton's got a good enough gap to catch. Well, he's got enough of a gap over Perez if Perez doesn't quite catch all of the apexes nicely, in order to keep himself in 2nd place potentially. Although as soon as I say that, he then loses promptly about 3/4 of a second. So I'm going to shut up. Norris is... Oh, Perez. All kinds of problems there. And again, Bottas in all kinds of problems trying to get out of the way for everyone. I'm really struggling to see what's happened with those Kick-Saubers. They've had an atrocious race. But there is Hamilton making his way through the traffic. Leclerc on his final lap, just making his way past the other Kick-Sauber. And it looks like this is exactly what Charles Leclerc needed in order to get his championship back on track and make sure that he takes over the lead potentially of this, because Sainz and Russell are 6th and 10th at the moment, and it's not looking good at all for them as they make their way around the final corner, and Charles Leclerc wins the race. Another win for Ferrari. Hamilton gets 2nd. Perez holds on just a 3rd ahead of Alonso. I was shocked with that. Verstappen ends up in 5th. Sainz is going to be 6th. Then it's Piastri. Stroll a lonely-ish 8th place, or is it? No, Norris nearly gets him bang on the line there. In fact, it's gonna... yeah, no, it's okay. Stroll does hold off Norris. Russell gets 10 ahead of Tsunoda and Ricciardo, Gasly, Magnussen, Ocon, Albon, Hülkenberg. Sargent is going to score 2 points there. Zhou grabs 1, and Valtteri Bottas scores absolutely nothing. He was the slowest car on track as well. Well, Leclerc also gets fastest lap, which will help him out. And I think that does indeed, with 2 to go, put him 2 points ahead of his title rival Carlos Sainz. And with Russell's poor score, that really puts him on his back foot into 3rd. And whilst technically because there's what, 30 points per race to be had. So technically Alonso and Perez are still in the hunt. You wouldn't have thought so, would you, really? Then it's Hamilton. Verstappen still not able to leapfrog the McLaren duo. I find that bizarre. Racing Bulls had a good score though, and that's really helped them out. Sargent getting closer to double digits. But what that's done for Racing Bulls is to make sure that they pull back ahead of Alpine in the battle for 7th and 8th positions overall. And with Red Bull scoring decently with both Verstappen and Perez there against Aston Martin, that's helped Red Bull move up into 3rd. We shall see. So, Kota next. This is looking resplendent with the excellent artwork that has been put into all of the runoff zones here. So let's see how this all goes. This was one of the poorer original circuits because everyone used to run off at turn 1. It's been totally reorientated actually for this version 2. So hopefully this means that it will feel much different from a driving experience. Very tight lines as they work their way around. I'm surprised the soft tyres last 7 to 10 laps, to be honest, because it looks like it's a real skid fest in that final sector. And that allowed Charles Leclerc to nip pole position, the title championship leader, by a tiniest of margins. Look at that. The top 7 separated by 0.15 of a second. And there's the 2 Red Bulls, Piastri, Alonso, and the 2 Mercedes. So Russell there really having to think about what he can do to get himself back in the hunt. Sainz down in 9th, that could be problematic. Albon gets ahead of Lance Stroll, so that's a rare bottom 5 team in the top 10 in quali. Zhou Guanyu, 13th, and only under half a second off pole. I think that's by far his best effort of the season. His teammate down in last, and only 1.17 seconds covering the whole field. That's the tightest we've had all season long. So we're off and away. That looks very tight down at turn 1, but everyone's got through okay by the looks of it. Leclerc leads it from Verstappen, Perez and Piastri, and the top 6 are all on soft tyres, so that's very, very helpful. Norris down in 7. Piastri had a terrible run there out from the back straight, and that's really cost him because Sainz has got through, and Perez, Russell and Alonso, and this is a dream start for Russell, who's gone from looking at 6th on the grid to 3rd place, whilst Verstappen eyes up Charles Leclerc down into turn 1. Not able to do it, but then through the wonderful cascades of the first sector, he's all over the back of the Ferrari, not able to do anything of it, goes down the outside, going to be pushed up into the wall. That won't help at all. Who was that in trouble? That was Perez, I think, causing problems for Alonso and Albon, and someone getting lots of penalties there. Hamilton having an absolutely poor time of it, down in 9th place. Norris in 10th as well in trouble. And that's Bottas with a penalty. Now, he started last, so how he's got himself up into 12th, I've no idea. But a great start there for the Finnish driver as Verstappen has got round. Where's Leclerc? Leclerc's down in 6th. Something's happened to Charles Leclerc in all of that. I didn't see it, but he's in real big trouble. And now he's got Albon, Perez, Alonso all over the back of him. Again, Albon pushed out into the barriers. More damage for him. But this is key because George Russell and Carlos Sainz are now both ahead of our championship leader, who just had another time penalty there. Not that it really mattered because everyone was all scrambled up together. This is big things here as Verstappen leads the way. Sainz is going along for the ride. Russell's having a go at Oscar Piastri. Can he get through and up into 3rd place? The answer is yes, he can. So Russell's Mercedes moves up into 3rd, clips the wall there. That's not going to be very helpful. I need to be super careful of that. Look at Albon up in 5th in the Williams. We've not seen that for a very, very, very long time as he battles with Lewis Hamilton on the hard tyres. That's all kind of worked out quite nicely for him. Ocon up in 9th on hard tyres too. there's some real damaged cars going on. So something's not working quite right with this track, I think, because we've got some real problems. Look at Logan Sargent up in 13th, damaged in that Williams, but he's got through. Stroll, Gasly, Bottas, Zhou, Magnussen. Oh, there's Leclerc in the pits. This is a huge thing now for Charles Leclerc. He's got himself into the championship lead and is now having an atrocious race. Gets himself back through past Bottas. Next up is Gasly and Stroll. They're too busy squabbling with each other. That's allowed Leclerc through past one. Is he going to get past the other? Yes, he does. Next up is Logan Sargent, who I don't think has been 12th position all season long. Immediately gets nerfed out of the way. But there we go. Leclerc really having to do a different strategy and is on the back foot here. As look at Piastri in trouble. Russell's in trouble. And Russell, I think, is heavily damaged there in that Mercedes and might need to pit at the end of lap 6. This is a real snaky circuit and is causing problems for everyone except for Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, who have pulled a huge gap of 5 seconds from Oscar Piastri out in front. Everyone else really struggling as they go side by side round various different corners, and I'm assuming that Verstappen and Sainz are going to continue on. Yes, they do. So do the two McLarens and Hamilton. But into the pits comes Albon and Russell, and Perez has tried, but he can't do it. And we know what happens with that type of problem. I think that'll be Perez out of this race. He'll get to go round again. Alonso there having a problem. Sargent, Bottas and Zhou are all in as well. Ricciardo's been in, as has Magnussen. But really, this is huge ramifications for the championship, this, because Nico Hülkenberg was in 5th. Well done. Not for long, though, because Ocon's just gone up into 6th. Into the pits comes Verstappen, looking for his first win of the year. Sainz then in second. Those two quite well clear, although Hamilton has now just taken the lead and Norris now pushing Verstappen. This could cause problems. Ocon up into 4th for the Alpine very briefly. And that will take that team to new heights potentially as they work their way through. Then it's Hülkenberg. Leclerc now back up into 7th place. So it's looking a little bit better for the Ferrari driver. And he's ahead of George Russell. But he had to go onto those hard tyred compounds much earlier. And that will cause him a strategy problem later on. Verstappen leading the way on the soft tyres though. This is working out nicely for him. Then it's Hamilton, Sainz, Norris, Ocon. There's Charles Leclerc having a go at Nico Hülkenberg and it's not worked out, and through goes George Russell, and that's again a big championship ramification because it's another person between Sainz and Leclerc, but Russell needs to outscore Leclerc in order to make sure that he can take the championship battle down to that final round. Tsunoda into the pits down at the back end of the field, and Perez, well, that's ruined it for Red Bull, hasn't it? He's going to run out of everything soon. As look at the state of that car. And his teammate is coming around. And I wouldn't be surprised if he clips him on his way through. And that causes the DNF for the car. Yeah. Uh-oh! That's not quite the inter-team drama that we was expecting. But now look at Charles Leclerc is the one that's got caught up with Sergio Perez's broken car. Now Albon has as well. Oh my goodness me. Let's hope that Perez just conks out on the straight and off the racing line, please, so that it doesn't cause problems. Oh, Gasly and Stroll. No. Oh, well, hopefully, if everyone can just keep bashing him around, he'll end up back at the pit wall where he can then get stuck and then ends up out of the race entirely. Although he's off the racing line there, so that could be quite useful. Does mean, though, that Sargent is currently on for a point, so that will help him out. Back up front, the second half of the race, though, Max Verstappen leading Carlos Sainz by 1.5 seconds. Nicely does it. There is Russell, though, in third in the hard tyres. And that's helpful as Norris pops into the pits nice and early for him. Russell might be able to still make this home on the single stop. I'm not sure. Then it's Piastri. Leclerc now up into 5th. So again, scoring nicely. Hamilton and Albon behind. Hamilton on new soft tyres. So he'll be going to the end of this race on those. That's Alonso on knackered softs versus Norris on new ones, so 8th and 9th for him. Hülkenberg in 10th, Ocon 11th, both on tyres that could take them potentially to the end. Not so for Gasly or Stroll or Ricciardo or Zhou or Bottas. Tsunoda, potentially not either. There's Kevin Magnussen, who's just rejoined in 19th place, right at the back of the field. And that, thankfully, is Perez no longer being a menace to the, the race. As who was that changing position? That's Albon, Leclerc and Hamilton. Yeah, Leclerc, Albon, Hamilton and Norris all involved in a squabble over 5, 6, 7 and 8. And again, that's Charles Leclerc having to be very aggressive. And see Russell getting away from them. Sainz and Verstappen, though, into the pits. They've come back out on soft tyres. And again, there, look, Verstappen into the lead. Russell now into second. I think Russell might still have to pit, you know. Sainz now in third. Then it's Hamilton. Then it's Leclerc. But Leclerc looking fairly damaged and knackered on tyres. He's going to need another pit stop. I don't think Norris will. Piastri certainly doesn't. I don't think Ocon will, although that should be in theory quite slim pickings for Leclerc to get through. But there's smoke coming out the back of that Ferrari. He's going to need to do some damage repair as Verstappen... Ooh, that has worked out beautifully for the Red Bull driver, as Sainz is going to have to work his way through. Leclerc in the pits. Where's he going to come out? Just ahead of Esteban Ocon in 8th position. So Albon and Piastri. Albon should be easy pickings because I think it will have to pit anyway. And Russell, I think, might still need to pit as well. But Russell's holding on quite nicely versus Sainz and Max Verstappen. But this could be more around the fact that there's just chaos everywhere in terms of back markers more than anything else. As Sainz gets around Bottas and Tsunoda. Next up for them is Logan Sargent, who's looking a little bit wrong-footed. Kevin Magnussen there got a penalty, I think, for shoving Max Verstappen off the track, interestingly. So Verstappen still leading away just about, but I thought he was going to make more hay out of those back markers compared to what he did versus Carlos Sainz, but it didn't really happen. And Tsunoda there getting around Magnussen. Good little position change for 16th and 17th for him. So Verstappen, Sainz, Russell, who is staying out. He's committed to that strategy now. Then it's Hamilton, then it's Norris, then it's Piastri. Alonso is next, then it's Leclerc. And you have to say, actually, it might be worth, because of the sheer gap that's going on here for Hamilton and Russell, it's worth staying out and trying to cling on. Because he's losing time to Verstappen and to Sainz quite rapidly. But when you look back, really it's Piastri who's the only person vaguely nearby who's got good tyres with 3 to go. So let's see how this all works. The big thing here is what can Carlos Sainz do, because if Sainz has got a big gap now as Piastri gets past Norris for 4th and 5th positions, the big thing here is if Sainz can beat Verstappen, who's not won yet this season as he goes on to his penultimate lap, and Sainz looks like he's closing in ever so slightly, although they are on the same tyre strategy. Here comes Piastri, absolutely flying on those softer compound tyres. This old Logan Sargent gets absolutely dumped down at turn 1 by Magnussen and Piastri, and look at how problematic George Russell's pace is. Now, the big thing here is that he's going so slowly that potentially Norris, Hamilton and Leclerc could well do something about this, but everyone being held up hugely. Russell's going to be taken out of the podium places very soon, I'm sure of it. As that is Verstappen getting around Zhou and Hülkenberg, and that has been extremely helpful for Max Verstappen versus Carlos Sainz. Zhou gets a penalty. Hülkenberg's got all kinds of spray coming out the back of his car now, but it's the final lap. It should not matter too much for him. And Carlos Sainz tries as he might. Piastri has got past Russell, by the way, off the screen for 3rd and 4th. But Max Verstappen finally gets the race win on the penultimate round of the season. Carlos Sainz second, and that's huge for the championship. Piastri is going to get third, and that is very big for him in his battle against his teammate. Russell gets fourth and outscores Leclerc, which means that he stays in the championship fight. Leclerc comes home fifth, and that's a good recovery because that could have been a lot worse. Norris sixth, Alonso 7, Hamilton 8. Daniel Ricciardo is going to be 9, just ahead of Esteban Ocon in 10 and Pierre Gasly 11. But that's a great run there for Alpine, who have got a terrible car. Piastri fastest lap too. So the Alpines 10 and 11 for Ocon and Gasly. Albon gets 12 for Williams. Stroll only 13th in the Aston Martin. Tsunoda 14th for Red Bull, or Racing Bull, sorry. Zhou and Bottas 15 and 16 in Sauber, beating home both Hasses there, Hulkenberg and Magnussen. And Sargent wasn't last for all of that race, but ended up there in the end. Although he scores a point because Perez did not finish. And that helps Logan Sargent get into double digits and 10 points. Gasly now leapfrogs quite comprehensively ahead of Zhou Guanyu, so that's kind of ruined that battle at the back there. Magnussen has now slipped behind Daniel Ricciardo, interestingly. And you'd say Albon is kind of won best of the rest, but you're never quite sure. Verstappen has now somehow ended up outscoring Perez because of that non-score for Sergio Perez. So Verstappen now up into 7th as the lead Red Bull. But considering that car is scoring almost maximum points everywhere, I'm very confused by this whole thing. But I'm not complaining. Piastri just a point ahead. Then we've got Hamilton just a few ahead of that. Alonso 2. And then the 3 drivers in for the championship hunt. George Russell very much the outsider, but Carlos Sainz versus Charles Leclerc, just 5 points in it. I think that's going to be a whoever wins out best is going to win it. The other juicy things going on here, Ferrari winning the Constructors, pretty much already, yeah, I think it is actually mathematically theirs now, ahead of Mercedes and Red Bull. McLaren could still in theory catch Red Bull and Aston Martin catch McLaren, but it will be very difficult to do so. The Haas, Red Bull, Racing Bulls and Alpine story I think could be interesting and could have a last minute swing with Williams and Sauber off the back. And let's go to Suzuka for an old school season finale. I miss Suzuka being the finale from the 90s and like 2000s era. Although a little part of me still loves a good bit of Adelaide. I'm that old. And George Russell looks like he fancies getting pole position straight out of the bag here for Mercedes so that he can try and control the race from the front. That could be interesting if he's able to do it. But there is a clutch of drivers going for it, and it looks like Lewis Hamilton is now pulling away and ahead. But I think Charles Leclerc is the other car that is right alongside him as they dive for the line. Is that a dead heat? I think it is. We've got a dead heat for pole, and it goes to Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc will start alongside. Then it's Perez and Russell. Sainz starting 7th position. That won't be happy for him. The 2 Aston Martins rounding out the top 10. Albon resuming his place as best of the rest in 11. Ahead of the Hasses. The 2 Alpines down at the back. So for the final time of asking, Hamilton leads us away, but he's on hard tyres. Leclerc immediately to the insides on the softs, but he's pincered out as we go into and up through the S's. And we'll make our way through to the Degner corners. And this is going to be where, Leclerc does indeed take the lead. Beautifully done. Russell trying to go around the outside. Look at Sainz being aggressive against Piastri. He gets through and he takes Perez too. So 3 of the 4 top people here are our championship contenders. Hamilton's the weird one in the middle. And look, George Russell bombing through round 130R and into the Casio Triangle, or whatever it's called now. I think it's the NGK chicane. Takes the lead. Piastri having a go now in the McLaren. He's shown some great pace across this season. Two drivers well off the back there is Gasly and Sargent. Zhou a little bit too, so clearly we've had some people be run off the road. So let's see how this works. Hulkenberg and Magnussen, 6th and 7th in the Hasses. What great starts for those, both on soft tired compounds. So can they make real big progress here? Norris has gone through there. There's Verstappen dropping like a stone. Albon goes past him and Ricciardo in the battles towards the lower end of the top 10. Perez really in trouble there too as Zhou Guanyu gets past him. Alonso down in 16th place has been run off the road, surely with that. And here is Sainz, Russell, Leclerc, Piastri. It's really strung out. And clearly there's something going on. Maybe through the S's that sometimes if you're going side by side, it's really pushing drivers off and they're struggling to get back on again. As there's Norris with some heavy damage getting round Lewis Hamilton for 5th and 6th position. And there you can see Piastri versus Russell across the line. But it is Carlos Sainz, our championship leader, who is absolutely running away with it. We're getting back onto normal. Apologies. It's the D-pad on the controller sometimes moves stuff around. But yeah, really having some issues here. There's Albon versus Verstappen. Verstappen gets back past the Williams driver. Magnussen now down to 10th. That's Perez making his way past Ricciardo and Ocon. Alonso trying to recover in 15th position. And yep, it's all looking very dramatic down the back. And that's Piastri off the track. So clearly the final corner is a thing to be wary of, because you can end up in the grass, because that has given Carlos Sainz the lead back from Piastri. There's Russell, Leclerc, Hamilton, Norris, Hulkenberg, Verstappen with damage, Magnussen, Albon has got background, Stroll, who's retaken 10th place back from the Williams driver, who's going backwards fast. Alonso now past Esteban Ocon and up into 14th, and that looks like Perez is about to take Daniel Ricciardo. As well he should, judging by the cars that they are in. Tsunoda and Gasly squabbling around at the back. Sargent being dropped again with damage by the looks of it a little bit. Not much though. As Piastri and Sainz lead the way. And there is Leclerc being wrong-footed by Norris as he goes in pursuit of a podium. They're all running out wider at that hairpin. But some are doing it better than others. That will be a real pinch point as tyres become very warm, because you'll spend more and more time out in that grey area. So you've got to be very careful with that one. As into the pits come Sainz, Russell, Norris and Leclerc, all at the end of lap 6. And Sainz is stuck behind Norris, and this is big problems for him. Pit stop dramas all around. Norris is the big winner with that, because he's been able to hold up Russell and Sainz in how they did their pit stops. They've all come out just behind Alexander Albon, now trying to work their way through. And if Norris can get round the outside Degner too, indeed he does. Beautiful move there. Stroll getting his nose in, Albon being absolutely rammed out wide, Ricciardo having the same with Perez and Leclerc just behind. But this is crucial because there's lots of cars between Sainz and Russell and Leclerc, but actually not much time in it at all. So this is going to be really key. They lost out big time as, who was that? That was Albon into the pits for the Williams team. So that's one out of it. But Piastri, the first leading pitter then ahead of Verstappen. Hamilton really in his own element there, some 3 seconds clear of Verstappen. Then it's Piastri, there's Russell. Norris getting stuck in with Carlos Sainz. These now all on hard tyres. They will probably need to pit again before the end of the race, as will Leclerc. There's Stroll being taken by Sergio Perez for 8th and 9th. Ricciardo's in 10 ahead of Hulkenberg and Magnussen. Those Hasses have pitted as well, so they've got good pace, the Haas team, in this final round. Let's see whether they can pull something out of the bag with that. Zhou has yet to pit. Alonso has and is down in 14th, and this is a real shame for him. It's his weakest race, I think, so far this season, as Bottas and Sargent go into battle down at turn 1. Hamilton, though, leading the way quite comfortably from Verstappen, and Sainz has now moved up into 3rd. And his big thing is keep me ahead of Charles Leclerc. But Leclerc is closing in. That's Hamilton and Verstappen into the pits. That moves everyone up loads. And this is now the battle for the lead as Norris, Russell, Piastri, Sainz all come together. And there's Charles Leclerc, who is now the next one in line. And I said all of those cars might be between them, but they'll soon disappear. There wasn't much time between them, and that really shows at half distance. Russell trying to get round Norris, the two Brits battling away, but it is not helping it's not helping Leclerc or Russell really be able to do much about any of this, because there's not enough cars between Russell and the Ferraris to do anything about it. Having two McLarens there is great. He would love to have his teammate there too, but Hamilton is just a few seconds off the back of this. Free wide through Degner too. Wow. And the hairpin. All right, calm down. Oh, but Russell gets a penalty. That's big. And that allows Leclerc through. Russell also have now got a bit of damage. And there's teammate Lewis Hamilton diving through. That's not the order that I think Russell wanted. So as they dive their way through again, it's McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes and Mercedes. Not for long, as the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton comes into play and is absolutely on fire getting through. He's got the best set of tyres as Sainz gets round Piastri and up into second place. But I think Hamilton might try and have the lot of them, and indeed he does. Beautifully done there for the time being. He's on soft tyres, so he needs to make hay whilst the sun shines, but it is going to be very tricky for him to do much else. They're coming around soon to start lapping cars as well. So as Hamilton reaches the top of the bottle cork, there you can see Logan Sargent and Valtteri Bottas not too far up the road as they start to be lapped. Into the pits comes Kevin Magnussen. He's having a great race in 9th position. Hulkenberg is in 8th. And if that gets Magnussen out ahead of all of these other drivers, indeed it does, and if he can hold off Daniel Ricciardo, this will be key for the Haas team to have a really great end. Nope, Ricciardo gets through, so Magnussen's going to need to think about that a little bit. Here's Lewis Hamilton popping a lap on Logan Sargent, but Lando Norris is not getting away, or is not letting him get away. Piastri, Sainz, Russell, Leclerc. This trio, they're all next to each other in terms of the actual standings, but it's not helping them at all, as there's Nico Hulkenberg coming out of the pits, and that's what an over and undercut does. Hulkenberg was well clear of Magnussen before those pit stops, and it didn't really help him out. But the extra grip, I think, will now start to come into his own as he goes around the outside of Daniel Ricciardo's Racing Bull. There's Magnussen trying to go around the outside, and a great Haas teamwork makes the dream work. Through they go. Well done. Stroll next, Zhou in 13th. Then there's Ocon and Albon. Alonso down in 16th. He's had 2 stops, so he should be good now, but that's not great. And Lando Norris still struggling there with Logan Sargent, who gets a penalty now, and Pierre Gasly there is causing problems for them too. This has really backed everyone up, to be honest, because Hamilton has had a second pit stop, has now got beautiful fresh tyres, and no one's gotten away with anything because we've had problems with... Ooh! Well, that was pure luck. And that's problems again there coming out of the pits. That was Verstappen in trouble. Not Verstappen. Russell in trouble, who couldn't get out of the pits because Leclerc was blocking him, and Leclerc then gets ahead of Russell, and this is again played beautifully into Carlos Sainz's advantage. Mr. Appendix himself is going to end up looking very much on top form. He's got a couple of seconds advantage over Leclerc and Russell, and so long as he keeps Leclerc behind him, Russell's got to wait for miracles to see if anything can really happen to his championship charge. He needs to really win and have the Ferraris down the back. As that's not going to happen, it looks very much like he could be in the pound seats here, but he just needs to keep Leclerc in and around him to make sure it happens. Piastri still leads though from Max Verstappen, but not for much longer, because here's Lewis Hamilton now in third, who's got round everyone with those new fresh tyres, and here comes Verstappen past Piastri, who passes Tsunoda. I think they're going to commit to staying out on these tyres, but Piastri's tyres are absolutely shot, so I think he'll drop like a stone. And this could be, again, another big thing here for the Sainz-Russell-Leclerc squabble for the championship, because as Verstappen peaks back out to the front again, this could be 2 wins right at the very end of the year for Max. Although I'm not sure, because Hamilton is absolutely flying in that Mercedes with some great tyre life. There comes Lando Norris past his teammate as well. Next up is Sainz, then it's Russell, then it's Leclerc, and they've kind of separated out slightly. So with 2 to go, Carlos Sainz is definitely looking in control for the championship. Lewis Hamilton looks like he's in control for the win of this race though. And this could be a last nice little Philippe for the British driver in the Mercedes at the end of the 2024 season. Gets around Valtteri Bottas, skidding around in his kick Sauber. And that's worked out nicely. Norris, though, quite fancies a good end to his season, and McLaren's. McLaren haven't won a race. Now they could do, as he pops into the lead for the final lap of the Japanese Grand Prix and this season. Wow, I wasn't expecting to be talking about this. There's Verstappen and Piastri, and they've now been caught by Sainz, who is looking like he fancies getting more cars between himself and Russell and Leclerc, and that is super helpful. Norris still leading the way, and look at Hamilton, he's really dropped off. Norris has better tyres than Hamilton, but only just. Let's see what happens down this back straight. Can Hamilton do anything with the slipstream? He's closing in slightly, but not enough. And Lando Norris comes out of the final corner and is going to take a win for McLaren as the closeout of the season. Hamilton second, Verstappen third, fourth is Carlos Sainz, and he is our world champion for this AI Championship for Ultimate Racing 2D2. Fantastic stuff. Russell came home next ahead of Leclerc, but Leclerc will be second in the championship. Great stuff for Hülkenberg 8th and Kevin Magnussen 10th. Haas's best day of the lot. I think that's the best result for Zhou Guanyu in 12th as well. Alonso had a torrid time there down in 13th. But well done to Lando Norris for getting a McLaren victory. The 2 Haas's in the top 10 there, scoring 22 points, really helps them out in the Constructors' Championship. And then further down, again, no points there for Logan Sargent. But yeah, good day there for Zhou, and a poor day for Alonso and Stroll, really, in the Aston Martins. Not much more you can say about it. So, going from the bottom of the table up, Logan Sargent was last. Bottas was outscored by Zhou Guanyu, but neither of them could get past Gasly's Alpine in 17th. Tsunoda was the least scoring racing bull, but Ricciardo managed to outscore Magnussen. I wonder how that works on countback, because I feel like Magnussen had a better top result. I don't know. Ocon just 1 point ahead after some early good performances in the Alpine. Hülkenberg there with that good result at the end, managing to get within 1 point of Albon, but not close enough to stop Albon being the best of the rest, basically. 10th goes to Lance Stroll, crossing the 100-point margin. Perez only 9th in the Red Bull. That's very disappointing, obviously, with that 0 score. Lando Norris, 8th position on exactly the same points as well. So despite getting that win, only ending up 8th, and behind Oscar Piastri, who ends up in 7th. Max Verstappen came home 6th in that championship, with a stronger end to the season, but really a bizarre thing considering he was given all the top stats. He was 1 point behind Fernando Alonso, who despite a poor season finale had a very consistent year throughout. Hamilton was 4th. George Russell will be 3rd, crossing the 200-point mark. Charles Leclerc is 2nd. And our winner and championship runner, or winner, is Carlos Sainz with 225. And that means that Ferrari are definitely still your constructors, keeping Mercedes at bay. Red Bull kept McLaren at bay, and I didn't think it would be that close by the end, but Lando's win bringing that slightly closer than what it should have been, maybe. Aston Martin kind of in no man's land in 5th. The great score at the end for Haas ensured that they kept 6th position ahead of Racing Bulls in 7, who held off Alpine in 8, with Williams and Sauber 9 and 10. And there you have it. Ultimate Racing 2D2, the F1 2024 AI Championship. I hope you enjoyed these. It's been a while since I've done one. Please let me know in the comments if there are things that you want to see. Some people asked for me to actually play this game instead of just commentate over AI racing. Some people prefer the AI racing, so yeah, just let us know down in the comments. I'll catch you later. Cheers.